You sneaky buyer's agent. Good afternoon, everybody. We had a long break for Labor Day. I did not labor on Labor Day. Interesting to note that a lot of times houses, I've noticed during the holiday weekends, it's best not to list a house. It's best not to try and go buy a house. The reason why I say that is if you're listing a house, everybody's out of town. Like in St. Louis, everybody's at the lake. So when you're listing a house, when there's a holiday during the summer, everyone's gone. So your best chance of having a bunch of buyers is not that great. And then on the seller side, if you're occupying the home, you may not want people in your house for a holiday weekend because you may be having family over or something like that. So most of the time we just move the showings. Don't list it. We list it the following week. And that's exactly what I did with a listing that I had last week that we moved to this week. So that's what we do. Today, we have an article about the crazy hot bonkers market. And it's out of Nashville, but it's just the same in St. Louis, and it's the same in many different places. But I wanted to go through it. I'll read a little bit of the article, and then I'll go through kind of my thoughts on it and kind of try and help explain some things. I feel like there's not enough pushback on some things. When people see it, they automatically read it, and they accept it as truth. And it may be true, but there may be ways to not have a bad situation. So as an example, some of the sneaky things that buyers are doing in this market, maybe you don't want to be doing that when you're trying to buy the home of your dreams. And so we'll just go over that. The article is entitled Nashville's Bonkers Housing Market. And it says, as the pandemic has slowed, homes are selling fast and prices have skyrocketed. So this is in Nashville. It says single-family homes in the $200,000 to $300,000 range were starting to stay on the market for as long as 3, sometimes 4 days. Okay, that's hyperbole, but not much, and that's true. Houses are going in a day or two. So it's still ridiculous. So they say that the reasons for this are record low interest rates designed to goose the economy, drew in more buyers who are already thinking about purchasing a first home or upgrading after spending all that cooped up time in their old one. Builders aren't building nearly as much as they once did, and even if they wanted to, the soaring cost of lumber and other materials make it a poor venue to play anyway, or poor revenue to play anyway. Yeah, the record low interest rates definitely caused the issue. And I will say that the coronavirus definitely had some impact on it. Builders aren't building nearly as much as they once did. And why is that? Is it because of lumber, or is it because of building restrictions in every municipality? So then we go into the bizarre situation of having, and we've talked about this, the bizarre situation of having more real estate agents than homes to sell. And that's true. It is strange. Nashville, it says the number of home closings is higher than the number of remaining homes on the market. And then it says that there's a 24-day supply. It's been tight here in St. Louis, especially in like my zip code. It wouldn't have even been 24 days for supply. So then it's one of the things that I thought was interesting was it says one veteran local buyer's agent tells the scene she apologizes to house seekers when they come to her with a pre-approval in hand and the American dream in their sights. She says, "I'm embarrassed by the market. It's absolutely embarrassing." And I don't know what's so embarrassing about it. It's embarrassing because a bunch of people want to buy a house and people are going out of their way to buy it. Doing stupid things. People do stupid things when the market's not hot. So I don't know why she's embarrassed by it. And to me, that's also how much control over the housing market does this woman have? I don't think she has that much. So anyway, it goes over to show some of the things that were crazy. One of the things it says stories of cash offers $30,000 over asking price in East Nashville are well worn by now. What nobody could have foreseen was the same thing happening in places that weren't featured prominently in coastal magazine lifestyle pieces, like, say, Bordeaux or Antioch. And I think that's interesting. In St. Louis, I work primarily in South County, and we have some expensive homes, but we're not Ladue, we're not Frontenac, we're not, those places. And the over asking phenomenon has been everywhere. It's not just the nice places in town. And I would say that the psychology of the seller and selling agent has changed to the degree that it used to be, if you set a price for a property, like, let's just say we're asking $200,000. If somebody came in at asking price, okay, hey, that's great. The offer's accepted, we move on. It was a buyer's market in the sense that you could, somebody used to say it's 92% of the asking price. So you come in, 92% of $200,000, and you can probably still get the house. Now, the asking price is a starting point for the basis of negotiations to the upside. And so now if a house doesn't sell for over asking, it's wild. And I wonder, and I'll take a stab at it, one of the stats that a lot of these like Zillow and HomeLight and all these places have gone with is, how many times has the agent listed something and sold it over asking? So it's a statistic now. Whereas before, we didn't have these portals, we didn't have this situation, so it wasn't even a statistic. It didn't even matter. I just wonder if that has a little something to do with it. The article goes on to say some of the things that are happening. And it says, this is in July, it says that things seem to calm down the few weeks of June after the spring, but I'll tell you what, it's super hot still. I actually thought it was weakening a little bit 2 weeks ago, and I just put a listing up, and the amount of interest is crazy. So let's go over some of the things that I have in the article that we can learn from. So buyer, there's some buyer tricks that some realtors are using, and so let's go over those. One, the buyers are using cash. So why does that matter over a mortgage? Well, it's in the way the mortgage process works. If you agree to buy a house in cash, you can eliminate the appraisal contingency. So a home seller doesn't have to worry about the appraisal is better than one who does. However, two things can happen even if you have financing. One, you can get an appraisal and agree to pay the difference in cash. And two, you can agree to pay in cash and then get a mortgage. So what I'll see a lot of times is somebody will say, oh, here's an offer in straight cash, okay, with no mortgage or no appraisal contingency, and they give you like an investment account statement, and then at the end of the day they close with a mortgage. So that's what I see. So I don't really care when somebody says they come in with cash. Now, with the appraisal rider, kind of get to the point where that's when you're going to see the market really freeze, is when somebody starts beating on the appraisers to stop with these crazy numbers. That's when the market will definitely freeze. It's because as soon as those appraisers go lower and lower, the more and more the buyers are going to have to bring the table in cash, and that will taper things off. Now, will that happen? I don't know. We'll see. But if you're a buyer now, don't worry so much about if you don't have, 100% cash. Maybe consider having the mortgage amount, say you're approved for $200,000, maybe have $20,000 in cash if the house doesn't appraise. That might be a way to do it. But I wouldn't be too worried about straight cash. And the next thing that sneaky agents are doing is offers are submitted before showings. And I've heard of this and I've seen it, but I would never advise my clients to do so on either side. The trick here is to put an offer the minute the house goes on the market. So in St. Louis, we have coming soon status, but it's not showable. Only when it's active is when you can go see the property, physically see it. So if you put an offer way above asking price before you actually physically see the property, then you have a better chance of getting the property in theory because you're the first offer. But this is super risky for both the buyer and the seller. For the seller, taking an offer when the buyer has not physically seen the property can increase the chances of the buyer backing out when they actually do. As we all know, pictures only tell half the story of a home. And once you've taken a house off the market, all those buyers who would have put in an offer have moved on. And I do believe in that. So when the house comes back on the market, people are like, why did it come back on the market? There must have been something wrong with the property. It may not be true, but it's what people think. And then for the buyer, if you put in a ridiculous high offer, what if the house isn't even close to that value? How would you know if no one else has had an opportunity to make an offer on it? And the same thing with the buyer as the seller. When you haven't physically seen the house, what if you hate it? What are your ways to back out? So we've already talked about this. In the hot market, you're probably not going with an appraisal contingency. You're not going with a finance contingency. So what happens when you've put in all this money? What if you put in a house $40,000 over asking that doesn't warrant it? How do you back out? And that's the issue. You lose your earnest money. So I don't know. It's not necessary for me in this space. I know how to work in this market. I understand it. So I don't have to do a lot of these tricks. Would I like it if one of my buyers had cash? Sure. But if they don't, we'll still go in with a mortgage. We may lose out on a few houses, but we'll find one. And that's the way you have to do this. I have buyers that see maybe 5 houses and they get disappointed. It's like, no. I see hundreds of houses, thousands of houses a year probably. Why worry about one that you don't like or that you didn't get? There's always another house. And that's how you have to think about it as a buyer. Your mindset is very, very important in this particular game. And then things in the article I've experienced. Number one, calling to schedule a showing and the house is already under contract within the first day. That's annoying. I've had that. But what are you going to do? I mean, if seller decides that you know they've got the offer that they're happy with, you move on. And then the other one is a highest and best offer call. I'm loath to do it on my listings in this market. As a buyer's agent, I usually counsel my buyers to put in as strong of an offer as they feel comfortable with in advance. So, like whenever we're looking at a house, if a buyer, let's just assume a house is $200,000, okay, the asking price, and they're willing to go to $210,000, okay, and then they put in the offer for $210 with an escalation clause. When they come back to do highest and best, your highest is $210. I see people try to bid against themselves sometimes, and it's really stupid. If you say you have multiple offers, which you may, you're not telling anybody what those offers are. You could have an offer $10,000 below asking. And so as a buyer and buyer's agent, you have to feel comfortable with the offer that you put forth. That's the key. I found a dangerous quote in the article, and it says, but people are so desperate for a home, they're willing to take on all the risk themselves rather than share that risk with a lender, as is standard practice. And with surging prices and new home construction unable to catch up with demand, who can blame them? There'll be equity far faster than the 5 to 7 years that's been the rule of thumb for decades. And it's as if the housing collapse of 2007 never happened. What a terrible time that was, and it can always happen again. And so that's what I saw in 2004, 2005. You had these buyers buying houses that were way overpriced then, okay? And they may have moved in 2007 to even a bigger house, even more risk. But they also got left holding the bag when they ended up buying that house in 2007 and things started to collapse. They were definitely not, they definitely had no equity in the home. And many of them took decades, a decade before they even were put back whole. So I don't think that's a good way to think. I would not tell my buyers that. And so finally, it says, the article notes that those suffering on the lower end of the home buying spectrum. The idea is because they are more likely to go FHA or VA, and their loan requirements keep them from making aggressive offers, which are ones with fewer contingencies. I think that first-time home buyers are having a difficult time, but I don't think it's any more so than others, and I don't think it's a price thing. For an example, let's say a house is asking $380 and it goes for $400. That's $20,000 over ask. If a house has an asking price of $160 and goes for $180, it's still $20,000 over. All buyers are having a tough go. Sellers are asking for the moon and sometimes getting it. However, when buyers and their agents really understand the pricing and the game, I think we can still get buyers into good, solid homes that they will enjoy for many years to come. And that's true. I do believe that. As a buyer's agent, your job is to educate your buyers on mine is value. Can we find value in this market? How do we find that? And sometimes that means we're not going to spend $30,000 and $40,000 over a house or over asking on a house. And if it goes for that, oh well. And similar on the seller side, if I see, comparable sales for a house that are within a certain range, and we price a house within that range, we should be happy on the seller side. If we price a house way over asking, some people think, well, if we just find one person, all we need is one to buy it and it's going to go great. Well, it doesn't work that way. The house sits on the market longer. You get less for the house in the end. And that even now, that's true. So the market's going to change. It always does. We don't know exactly when, and we don't know exactly how, but it will change. Things that don't change are if you buy a house that you really want to live in and you could live there the rest of your life and not complain. That's one thing. Number two, like the area that you're living in. Number three, don't treat your house as a piggy bank. A lot of younger people are interested in experience in their life. They want to go on vacation. They want to, have a nice car. They want to do all these other things. Housing isn't as important for this particular group. Now, I think this next generation, housing is super important. So I think the impact of the 2007 crisis did hurt the one generation as far as what they would like with housing versus experience with their income. So anyway, those are some of the things I've seen. This is some of the ways to help. I hope you have picked up something from my video. And if you have any questions, give me a call. That's all I can say. I'm happy to help. And anyway, thank you for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.